Welcome to NTR Radio. I'm Tom Force Nubis.
And I'm VZ Mark II.
K Guys isn't here today, so it's just myself and VZ. It's been a while.
Yes, it has a little bit.
Yeah, we missed last week due to scheduling errors, both with the guests we were supposed to have and among ourselves. That said, we have the show for you this week. What's up, VZ? What's going on?
Not much. Doing a lot of art and also playing Magia Record, as I've said before. Speaking of which, the anime for that is finally coming out in January. So I look forward. It's like the only thing Shaft can do at this point for Monica.
Well, yeah, it's the most given the popularity of the game now. It's the most logical conclusion they can do.
Yeah. No, because I've heard all sorts of things over the years, like, oh, they wanted to do a slice of life Monica show to, other continuations. It's like, I mean, I love the original show, and I even love the movie versions. I even loved Rebellion, but it would have felt like it. And this is like the best way to sort of do more Monica and not have it feel like, overdone.
Not having it feel like they're now just going back to the well because it's lucrative.
Yeah. I mean, now in the game, the original characters appear. I don't know if they'll appear in this. If they do, it'll probably be just like either visually or just maybe very little.
Right.
Because they're not going to do all the girls that are in the game, because a lot of the characters aren't even designed by Umeoki. So, I think they're just going to sort of select the ones that are designed by her that aren't the original characters, as evident by the new visual they got there.
Right.
Which is fine. I missed out on I actually want to get the Nendoroid of the main girl for this one, Iroha. I missed out originally on her, which I'm sure they'll reissue her, and maybe even some of the other girls. I'm just speculating, but I know they'll probably do those.
Right.
As far as what am I watching? Well, this season, was it Astro Lost in Space is continuing to be the best show of the season.
I still need to actually sit down and start watching that one.
Yeah, you do. I don't want to spoil anything. It's just watch it. It's actually I don't know. It'll keep you hooked on the story. Just don't follow anything that discusses the manga.
Right.
Let's see. Still watching Dumbbell, which is funny.
I need to catch up on that one.
Yeah, not Tokukobo's best, I'll admit. But again, it's still Tokukobo doing what they're doing. So, what's the other one? Oh, and yeah, I just call it Mommy Isekai. Again, it's so stupid, but it's so funny for being so stupid. And that's all I have to say on that one. And the other one that's actually kind of making me mad that I'm watching, when it isn't being boring, it's actually just getting me mad, is Oh Maidens in Your Savage season.
See, I'm about 2 or 3 episodes behind on that, but I'm actually really, really liking it.
I just it's like, dude, just have sex with each other. It's like, do you not know? And the one girl getting embarrassed because she accidentally bought. First she sees them, then accidentally bought Crutch's panties. I'm like, I'm sure American teens buy that. Like, I don't know. They act more like they're in junior high than high school.
Well, you realize that's the point of the entire show, is that they're highly conflicted on whether or not they're ready to have sex or not.
I know. Yeah, it. I don't get what's with that one girl, the one that's the sort of the flat-chested one that's short. The one trying to hit on her teacher.
She's the best character. Like, I don't know what you don't get about her. She's the best character.
I'm just like, why is she trying to hit on her? Well, okay, other than the obvious, I'm just like, why isn't the teacher like, trying to get her like, her in trouble? Taking her to, do something about it. Or maybe I'm just overthinking.
I think you're underthinking it, actually. I don't think it's as cut and dried as you're portraying it as.
And then there's the Russian girl that's getting hit on still getting contacted by that producer guy.
Yep.
And it's like, why don't you just like not answer his advances?
Again, I don't think that's as cut and dried as you're thinking about it.
It's like the one that's the most. It's like the one that's the most understandable for being the way she is the one that had the glasses. It's like, okay, she's she's the coat hang. Was it what's the thing? Coat hang. Was it the broom up the ass mentality?
Stick up her ass.
Stick up her ass. It's like,
I
okay.
know where you were going with the coat hanger. I don't want to know where you're going with the coat hanger.
Yeah, that I think that's for something else.
Yeah, you're thinking about something different.
Yeah, I don't know. But at least her motivation is the most like, okay, I understand what her thing is.
Again, I think you're underthinking all of this, quite frankly.
And the Garu is, she looks like a slut, but with the nerdiest boy. Yeah. Oh yeah. You finally see her boyfriend or whatnot.
Yeah.
And you're expecting like some like super Chad, and he's just like this normal shrimpy nerdy boy that looks like underdeveloped.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think you're underthinking all. This is a very smart show. I can tell this is a very smart show. But I think you're underthinking it. I haven't watched anything over the past few weeks. I'm going to tell you what. I did yesterday buy a new shelf. Because the solution is not buy less stuff. The solution is buy more shelves. So I got a new shelf. I also got the first 2 volumes of Komi-san Can't Communicate, the manga.
What is that one about?
That's the one about that's the manga about the girl who has crippling social anxiety, who like can't talk.
I never heard of that one. Let me find what that one is.
I can show you a picture in the IRC chat. By the way, for live listeners, here's how you can get involved in the IRC chat and whatnot. What you do is you go to ntrradio.net, click on the chat link. That'll bring you to the page where you put in your nickname and hit the button and join us in the IRC channel. Alternatively, take your favorite IRC client, point it at irc.ryzen.net, and join us in the # SLC Media channel. You can also get at us on Twitter at TAnubis, at VZMK2, at Immortal_KGods, even though he's not here. at NTR_radio. And as always, the email box to get involved with the show is ntrradio@gmail.com.
Oh, I now I know which one you're talking about. Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
so
now.
going in the chat right now, that's Komi-san.
All right. This doesn't have an anime planned?
I think it does, but I'm not 100% sure. I remember hearing something about an anime.
Oh no, that's not that one that what's let me see. Oh, okay, here's the Wikipedia. Manga plot. Manga. Okay, nah, there's no anime. Yeah, Viz has been licensed by Viz. Okay. Alright.
But yeah, so I picked up the shelf and those 2 volumes, and
Oh, that's interesting, because
That's
you
it.
usually don't pick up manga.
I usually don't pick up manga, but Komi-san is of particular interest to me. And manga is both inexpensive to me and a quick read, so
I want to get that manga that's coming out that really needs a series. What was it? Gal Gohan. Which, yeah, kind of tells you what it's about, just based on the title.
Right.
But they're actually doing a show in April of next year. When I tell you the title of that one, you're gonna laugh at what it's gonna tell you everything you need to know about that one too.
April of next year, Jesus.
Yeah, I know. Gohan and Dinosaur. I mean, Garu, not Gohan. Garu and Dinosaur.
I was about to say that's just Dragon Ball.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Garu and Dinosaur, and the dinosaur looks like the face looks like Blue from that show, Foster's Home of Imaginary Friends.
Oh, I already don't like it then.
Looks like a combination of that and Cookie Monster. No, it really does look like Blue from Foster's Home. It would be funnier if the dinosaur was like super smart and smarter than the Garu.
Oh wow, okay, I'm looking at it right now. It looks cute actually.
Or if it's like how Buck on Married with Children, the dog, would always say things that was like smarter than the Kelly. See, that's a premise. That's a premise. You gotta have a show about a Garu, a slutty Garu, and some animal. And the animal is smarter than the girl. Freezy, aren't you being a bit misogynistic?
No, I'm looking at the manga right now. It's actually like I'm not getting it yet, but it looks pretty cute and funny.
Yeah, look up Gal Gohan also.
The dinosaur's head looks like is basically just a sock puppet, by the way.
It does. Gal Gohan.
Okay, so it's a cooking manga.
Yes.
Art style is actually pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, I love that the manga industry has gotten so like caught up. I mean, obviously not everything is coming out, but a lot is.
Well, that's what I really like about the modern anime industry and the modern otaku goods industry in the West.
Yes.
Not only are we caught up with anime now, but manga and light novels especially are coming out.
It'll never be where Yeah, it'll never be where everything is just by the sheer numbers of.
Well, no, of course not. But it's still a lot better than even like even like 5-7 years ago when we didn't even have light novels out here at scale. The only light novel I can think of from back then was the Haruhi light novel released in the
Oh,
West.
the Haruhi and the god, not because of itself, but because of the cover that they chose for Spice and Wolf. That horrid cover that they did.
Well, right, and there's a reason you don't
But
see
again,
a lot of people talking about that old Spice and Wolf release.
no, but they you know what it is, because they were trying to do it for a regular a general audience that didn't, it's you don't need to go for, you don't need to try to,
Well, they were trying to market it to regular ass book readers, and that's not
exactly.
the mark. You're marketing it to people who already are into anime and otaku stuff. But yeah, it's to the point where you can pick up a new light novel in the bookstore and from that be able to predict which of these light novels is going to get an anime in Japan next.
Yeah, which there's one that's like, there's an isekai one next season that's gonna be like a wrestler.
I'm the innovative isekai premise guy, but I don't know about the wrestling isekai. Quite frankly,
Wrestler going into an isekai world.
I'm still waiting on the anime for vending machine isekai.
Right,
Because that's
right.
the best one. That's the most creative isekai premise. Mark my words, it's gonna happen.
I woke up as a on a hole in the other world or something.
Well, that's what happens when hentai gets on board with the isekai genre.
See, they got to expand further with this premise.
Anyway, we should move on to the next segment
Yes.
because there's quite a bit to say. So we're up against the break. Keep it right here on NTR Radio. Welcome back to NTR Radio. So, this episode we're talking about an article that I recently put up on Iyashike. And unlike a lot of Iyashike articles, this is a direct response to something. So, recently looking at September 4th, 2019, the official Crunchyroll Twitter put out a post that's going up in the IRC. All caps, anime is for everyone.
Oh, I didn't read that, but I saw the cap of that. So, like someone capping.
So this is something that sounds really good and positive on the surface, but knowing what we know about Crunchyroll and knowing what we know about their motivations and their socio-political paradigms and whatnot, it takes on a different meaning, because this is, you might remember back in the day when we commented shortly in the news segment about Crunchyroll hosting the LGBT panel at Anime Expo, and when met with skepticism about why that's necessary for them to host that panel, the response to that skepticism was because anime is for everyone. So, again, this is something that sounds really positive on the surface, but if you look at the motivations, if you look behind the scenes, it's a very potentially destructive paradigm to introduce into a subculture, especially one like anime that has its own deep history, its own deep culture, its own way of doing things that's currently under attack by a lot of, like, on various sides. Let's put it that way. Yes. So over the course of this took like 2 hours maybe to write. I wrote up an article on Iyashike. Anime isn't for everyone. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will post the link to it in the IRC. And my basic premise is this is the inclusivity edict. All right, and the inclusivity edict is what happens when a subculture decides that its highest virtue, or one of its highest virtues, is including everyone possible. And the reason that's a problem is because when you do that, suddenly you start having to sacrifice things about the subculture to inclusivity.
Yes.
So if we want to make anime inclusive, well, okay, here's what happens. There are people out there who don't like animation all that much. Do we need to include those people? There are people out there that have no interest, no respect, no anything for Japanese culture and the cultural origins behind anime as a medium. There's a whole lot of anime that's not going to appeal to those people simply by nature of what anime is. So
it's dangerously Japanese.
Oh yeah, exactly. So do we need to include those people? There are people who have political views that are at odds with a lot of anime. Again, simply by the nature of what anime is, and simply by the nature of where it comes from, and where its creators are coming from, etc. Do we have to include those people? Because when you're now starting from inclusivity, you start having to sacrifice those elements in order to simply include more people. When you're only virtue is how many people can we include in this subculture. Then you start having to cut away at the edges until you're eventually cutting away at the core, because you just want to include more people.
Well, that's my problem with like most Western IP media things at this point, is they're designed to be, as you said, for the most maximum amount of audience that you could and when you do that, you become like the most bland, either inoffensive or just like unengaging, or there's like nothing for me to how can I describe?
There's nothing to latch onto. It's like it's like a smooth rock face you're trying to climb up. There's no edge. There's no outcroppings to get your hands onto. Is really sink your teeth into, and rise up on that.
MCU doesn't appeal to me. Modern Star Wars doesn't appeal to me. Very little. I don't know if the only thing that appeals to me movie wise that's coming up is that Joker movie, the one that people are saying is like, oh, it's gonna be a rally cry for white straight men.
I'm gonna tell you, there is no part of Time and Force Anubis that has any interest in the Joker or really DC anything, quite frankly.
I actually don't care about DC either. I just really like Batman stuff. I like Batman when it's only Batman on its own. And again, that's like the closest thing that's like a non-anime big IP Western IP thing. But anything else is like nothing for me to gauge. Even the stuff that I used to be interested, like Transformers, doesn't have anything. And even I don't really care about the live action movies. I don't care about the cartoons that they do or the comics. There's nothing for me to latch on there too. But anime is the best that it's ever been.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. A lot of barring plenty of video games, a lot of Western IP that's real big in the geek culture space just is nothing for me. And it's tough for me to find a place to latch onto with a lot of these IPs outside of just, okay, I'll watch the new I'll watch the Marvel movies, but it's not the same as if I sit down to watch the Pat Labor movies. It's not the same as if I sit down to watch Genshiken or something like that. Where Marvel is just another movie to me. Genshiken is it's at least one rung above that, as far as me caring about it.
Yeah. The last kind of Western IP thing that I actually saw in the theater. And it's funny because very few people actually cared about it, but I actually thought it was pretty decent. Was the Power Rangers movie from 2017? Because I was just expecting it to be competent. You don't have to shoot that. Just be competent. That's all. Don't make me cringe. Can you not make me cringe like the Transformer movies? I still haven't seen Bumblebee yet, but I'm just saying in general. And it did exactly what I wanted it to do, which is don't make me cringe.
Yeah, going back to the subject. That's what happened with Western IPs. Is they needed to cater to everyone, partially because there's just so much money in that industry, and a whole lot of this stuff costs so much to make that they need.
Yeah. Oh wait. Oh, the AAA gaming, as you tell me.
AAA gaming as well. That they need to make it so it appeals to as many people as possible, so it'll sell as much as possible, just to recoup the cost of making it.
Oddly enough, the Destiny series, not in this lifetime, but if in another lifetime, if I was maybe younger, if I had a PS4 or whatnot, would be something I would be into, because it reminds me of one of my original stories.
See, I originally got in. Well, I say I got into Destiny. No, I've played the first game for like maybe 10 hours total.
Mm.
The reason I got it in the first place, long after Destiny 2 was on the horizon, when the game was like $8 to buy, was
Right.
because of comparisons to Phantasy Star Online.
Ah.
Which on some level are apt, and on another level they're different games. But that's one example. There's plenty of examples you can pick out of from the AAA gaming space.
Yeah, I have like no interest in like Fortnite
Fortnite
or
is
Overwatch
not very good.
or Overwatch.
Overwatch I haven't played and don't really have an interest in playing.
Barring Rule 34 of May.
Naturally.
Yeah.
But here's one of the first differences, something that makes anime unique, is a lot of people, I say a lot of people, nobody really talks about this, is part of the reason that anime can remain so creative despite it being such a well-known commercial medium, is the fact that it's so commercial.
I think
this is another article on Yashike I posted recently. People like to decry the production committee business model because it's so business heavy and it's so involved, it's so corporate. All these corporations are making the decisions about what this anime is going to be before the studio even touches it.
Right.
But what people don't realize and what nobody talks about is the fact that there are so many corporations involved in the production of all these anime is what keeps it creative. Because so here's what happened, and we talked about this during the 90s episode. After the 80s boom busted, it started to get really expensive to create all this anime. But the market was still on the rise. Otaku were still buying anime at scale. So what happened is, and they tested this business model out to some extent in the 80s, but what happened with Irresponsible Captain Tyler is a whole bunch of companies came together, and all chipped in to fund this anime, which also distributed all the risk. And that's important, because the reason you see all the AAA games, the big budget superhero movies and whatnot that are still ostensibly deep geek culture, but have to have this appeal to everyone. The reason you see that is because these are largely single studio and whatnot productions.
Yes.
That are spending all this money, and then now they have to recoup it. And they don't have a business model behind them that, one, distributes the risk, so it's not one company losing a whole hell of a lot of money if the thing fails, and two, ensures longevity. So,
well, 2 points I want to add, but
years, a decade down the line, the thing they put out is still making money. That's gonna eventually, it'll eventually break even if you wait long enough, and if you keep putting it out long enough.
Well, two points. One is that I think when people say they don't like the production committee model, I think what they kind of want, or at least think is that they seem to want a return, and this isn't going to happen because, again, the way things are set up now is um the guy that's both the single-handedly creator of the thing, that's also the character designer, the mecha designer, that, the OVA, because that's what happened during the OVA era. But the conditions for that was, again, bubble economy. Hey, I drew this thing on a piece of paper. Can I have some money? Here you go. Go make whatever you want, just as long as it's on the shelves for people to rent and buy. Do whatever you want. That's not. That doesn't exist anymore.
Well, here's the thing that does exist, because Kickheart came out and Under the Dog came out.
Well, yeah. Now we have crowdfunding anime.
So if people want to do that, then there is an infrastructure for that. The problem is, number one, people fundamentally don't understand what a production committee is, what a production committee does, and what the production committee's purpose is. Because nobody's incentive to tell them about that.
No,
least of all Crunchyroll, who we're talking about in this article.
Well, again, because they want to frame it with the artists aren't getting paid, the animators aren't getting paid, and it's like, yeah, but if you dismantle the production committee, a lot of people aren't going to get paid.
Yeah, more people. Number one, more people aren't going to get paid, and number two, you're not going to have the money in the industry in the first place to create anime in the first place. And that's what companies like Crunchyroll don't want to tell you, and it's deceitful because they're on the support anime part of their whole marketing is support the anime industry, which is good, which I support, which I'm on board with. What I'm not on board with is them not telling people how this stuff is actually distributed and explaining to them how this works and why it works.
Speaking of which,
when they talk about support the anime industry, what they're not saying what people think they're saying. So when they talk about anime is for everyone, they're not saying what people think they're saying. And realistically, if you look in the replies to Crunchyroll's tweet, you'll see quite a few people are not buying their bullcrap.
Speaking of which, apparently High Guardian Spice is still a go.
Yeah, well, it's
apparently
late.
A pilot.
So
I don't know. There's a pilot.
I don't know how that's acceptable, but it's very late.
Yeah, that would never be acceptable in the anime. Announce something and then a year later, unless there was some reason behind it. But now the other factor I wanted to get in is that there seems to be, again, a sort of, again, by the industry, the anime industry, to understand the fans being creative on their own, and sort of again, like the doujinshi scene. It's, because like here they sort of complain about they don't want you to make Rule 34 of like I've heard like stuff about Overwatch Rule 34 being complained about.
I think the Overwatch thing the ship has sailed on that, and I think Blizzard knows now that they can't really control that. What I do remember is back when BioShock Infinite was either coming out or had come out just recently.
Is BioShock the thing with the robot with the drill?
Yes. That's okay. The original BioShock. BioShock Infinite is something, it's the same but different.
Okay. You know how I still remember that? From the show Chio-chan's School Road. She has she has that in the background on her shelf.
But yeah, so when BioShock Infinite was either on the horizon or had just come out recently, there was a huge outcry because naturally people were making porn of the main girl, and the person who, like the creator of BioShock, I forget his name, had put out a huge plea like, please don't make porn of Elizabeth. She's like my daughter, which only prompted people to make more porn of her.
But yeah, I'll be like, you can make porn of my characters. It's like, go ahead, do whatever you want of my characters.
But yeah, so that's
I love to see porn of my characters.
That's another difference between, well, Western properties and like anime subculture. Anime largely embraces fan art, and that's because a lot of these things are highly concerned about their public image. They shy away from the more prurient aspects of the subculture.
Yeah.
But I want to get back to this animes for everyone thing, because this is an important paradigm. So here's what happens. You have the inclusivity edict that says, okay, inclusivity is a virtue. We have to be inclusive. And part of that is because we came out of, a lot of us as geeks and nerds came out of this thing of being excluded. So we know what it feels like to be excluded. And part of the issue there is we don't think it's right to inflict that upon other people. That's a noble notion. That's a noble paradigm. The problem there is, the reality is that it opens up the subculture to fundamentally abusive people who have no love or respect for the subculture as it exists and only value it insofar as they can personally profit off of it.
Right.
That's one level of it. Another level of it is it opens up the subculture to be assailed by people whose end game is to exclude people. So what happens is so here's from the article, anime isn't for everyone, Ariashike. When we think about intolerance, we're quick to imagine racists, sexists, homophobes, transphobes, etc., and leave it at that. In a subculture, however, intolerance takes on more forms. And this is where I get into my point. It's the moe fan who nonetheless hates on Fujoshi anime. It's the anime critic who can't give moe anime or its fans a fair shake. It's the anti-Twitter addict still ranting on about Shield Hero as the show is ending. People who don't have a live-let-live bone in their body, who lash out at differences just as superficial as race, gender, and sexual orientation. People who try to bend the subculture around their personal preferences, politics, and phobias instead of coexisting with other fans of different stripes. People who are willing to do harm to the subculture and the people within it in order to ensure that their egos get stroked a little bit more. So, and that's what happens. We end up with the ANN crowd at all as a result of the inclusivity edict. Because if you look at these people, they clearly don't have a respect for the anime subculture. Clearly, a lot of these people fundamentally don't know what they're talking about. I'm reminded of the time I caught
Isn't anime culture already inclusive anyway?
Very. Highly inclusive. But it's inclusive by these people's standards, which is to say there are plenty of minorities, there are plenty of women, there are plenty of people of various sexual orientations and sexualities in the culture already. That's well documented. Everyone knows that, except people whose agenda is predicated on there being a lack of, and it's always a terrible lack, by the way. So predicated on there being a terrible lack of women or black people or etc. in the anime fandom. But here's the thing. I'm reminded of a time I caught sight of a quote from an article on AniFem talking about Otaku no Video. And I won't get into it, but they got some fundamental facts about the anime wrong.
Oh boy.
And hey, I posted a comment, said, hey, okay, you're off base here. You're off base here, and here. Otaku no Video wasn't conceived as a parody of the Daikon animations. That's just wrong.
No.
There are three. Made the insistence that there weren't any women in the otaku group in Otaku no Video. There are three named significant female characters in Otaku no Video, so that was wrong. They had a bunch wrong about, like, fundamentally wrong. I didn't care what their point was on the individual article, but they had facts wrong about the anime. There's no way you can watch Otaku no Video and end up at the conclusions they ended up at. So I posted my correction, and naturally the comment was in moderation, and when I checked back later, it had vanished. So these are people who don't even have a level of respect for the subculture and the medium to be correct about the cartoons they're talking about. They want to make a point about these cartoons, but they don't. It's very clear they didn't actually watch the cartoon. They want to make a point about something they didn't watch. They want to make a point about something they don't respect enough to be correct about. They want to make a point about something that they have no love for, as evidenced by their actions, as evidenced by how they engage with the medium. And that's the issue. When we talk about intolerance in a subculture, we have to start accounting for subcultural factors. We have to start accounting for, hey, are you coming into this because you think it's a stepping stone for you, or are you coming into this because you actually have a passion for this thing that the subculture is built around? And the way we're supposed to be able to tell that is by looking at, okay, whether or not you're curious about learning more about the history of the subculture, learning more about its core tenets, its social paradigms, its values, whether or not you're interested in that stuff, and whether or not you're out here making proclamations about stuff you don't know about, how you react when you're corrected on something that you were wrong about. All these factors, and the problem with the inclusivity edict is that once you adopt the inclusivity edict, you can't ask these questions, because then you're being a gatekeeper, you're being non-inclusive, you're being an elitist. And the problem here is we're in a subculture. This isn't mainstream culture. There are, or should be at least, some barriers to entry. Now, they can be low barriers to entry, but there still needs to be some barriers to entry, and they need to be enforced, because otherwise we end up with a bunch of abusive people running around causing havoc in the subculture, and who don't need to stick around to deal with the fallout. They're running around dropping nukes, and they don't have to deal with the fallout. We have to deal with the fallout, and that's a problem.
It's again, criticizing stuff that didn't need to be criticized already. It's like again because it's like. It's funny. I never really heard people criticizing about things like fan service, or this, until more of the internet age. That was more, or definitely like, granted, the internet wasn't as big in the 90s or even early 2000s, up until like the sort of review sphere came about. Actually, the more criticism about that stuff came from that book I used to have, the erotic guide to anime, the guide to erotic anime. But I think definitely modern social media, where everyone gets to share their opinion on whether or not something is that sort of like amplified it.
Well, the barriers to entry are lower.
Is that too? But the thing is,
you don't need to be part of some esoteric PHP BB forum to be able to talk about anime. You can just have a Twitter account.
Yes, but the thing is, I see less and less of the opposite, which is people defending the stuff that they're into.
Well, the reason is because people, it's gonna get attacked. Like it's a lot easier to attack someone who's standing up for a type of anime than it is to attack someone who's shitting on a type of anime. It's a lot easier. Because if you're saying, hey, I really like so-and-so anime, and someone comes along and says, man, that show's shit. Now it's now on you to say, oh, well, okay, this I like it for this, and this reason. Whereas when someone says, man, fuck Divergence Eve, nobody's going to that person saying, okay, explain why Divergence Eve is so bad. Like, look at the whole Sword Art Online thing that's been going on for years, where people are hating on Sword Art Online, and it's like, nobody's gonna scrutinize why so many people have this vehement dislike for this cartoon. Nobody asks those questions because it.
How about talk about the aspects that make the show popular? Outside of because it's for the usual, it's for the lonely otaku men who wish to fantasize in being the. About something a little bit more than that.
Well, see, nobody wants to talk about that because that would involve talking about aspects of an anime that are perhaps not the most high artistic aspects of an anime, but nonetheless do attract people to enjoy watching the anime. But equally legitimate, and there's people who will shit on me for saying that equally legitimate as a lot of these high artistic aspects that are in play when people talk about Cowboy Bebop and whatnot. But people don't want to talk about that because everyone's obsessed with sounding really, really smart when talking about anime.
And it's funny, the times when they should be talking smart, but it's like, why aren't people talking about the sort of hidden messages that are in Popotan, which I think are excellent. I love the fan service, but how about the hidden, the sort of hidden messages and about like the sort of character moments that are in that. But no, they don't want to talk. They don't want to talk about. They don't want to sound smart when it comes to stuff like that.
Well, that we get to the second point on that paradigm, and that's because it's a cute girl anime, VZ. We can't talk positively about cute girl anime for some reason.
Because when I watched that show, I was really, I mean, the fan service and the character stuff was great, but I actually really latched onto the whole, the middle sister wanting to do her own thing, but you know, she found out that no, you have to do the thing that you have to do. You know, it's regardless of what your own intentions are. Sometimes you need to like do the thing that you're supposed to do.
And part of that goes back to the whole thing with these intolerant people I'm talking about, because the ANN crowd, the AWO crowd and whatnot ascend to tastemaker and thought leader positions and instill these mentalities in the fandom at large, saying these anime are acceptable to talk about on a deep level, and if it focuses on cute girls, it's not acceptable to talk about on a deep level. And they do this highly superficial stuff in an effort to again sound really smart talking about anime. But then what else you also get when you have the inclusivity edict, and this partially gets into yet another article that I put out on Ayashike back in August, is you get people whose utility for the anime fandom extends only as far as it can be used to advance whatever their pet ideology is. And this is an article I put out on the 16th of August. Quite frankly, this is one of the better articles I put out in recent years, in my own opinion. And this is Otaku Have No Political Allies. And this is sort of jumping off of the NTR episode 80.
I remember that
one. We talked about similar paradigms. This one actually got a pretty decent response. And what this tells me, what the response to Otaku Have No Political Allies and what the response to anime isn't for everyone is telling me, is that there's a pretty passionate underground of anime fans who are fed up with all the bullshit. Like, it's like who would have been maybe part of the more rational part of the more rational followers of like the Task Force MOE crowd back in the day. They're the people who are out here. They're highly skeptical of Crunchyroll. They're highly skeptical of entities like Anifem. They don't like ANN at all. They know what ANN's angle is. They know what ANN's bullshit is. And
by the way, that flag with your that symbol thing.
Yes.
That's a CG, I imagine, right?
Probably. I just went to a website that generates these things and put the flag in there.
Okay.
But yeah, so Otaku Have No Political Allies, and what I'm saying there is there are people who will come into the subculture under the guise of, we're trying to advance your subculture. We're trying to make your subculture better. We're trying to improve things in your subculture. And all you need to do is adopt the tenets of this ideology I'm introducing.
I'm proselytizing.
It's like, hey, have you? Do you have a few minutes to talk about our Lord and Savior Haruhi Suzumiya? So they show up, and this is like this is pretty squarely the anime crowd, but it's also people like Anime Right, and on a third angle, it's also people who these free speech people, quote unquote free speech people, who nonetheless have just all the scrutiny for anime and otaku subculture.
We love free speech, but we don't want any of these titties and
Or there was a particular free speech activist who I won't name, who almost went to jail for an offensive joke, and became a free speech activist off of that, which is noble. But what's not noble, and what I have no respect for, is the same person advocating people be sent to jail over offensive drawings.
Oh, right.
So it's people for whom it would be the most intellectually honest thing to do to stand up with anime fans, stand up against censorship with anime fans, but who nonetheless let their personal preferences take over and allow them to become what they fight against, just for as long as they need to shit on anime fans. Anime is the redheaded stepchild of geek culture. Everyone's willing to take from it, but nobody's willing to give to it except anime fans, which is why I say anime fans have no political allies. We have a responsibility to stand up for our own subculture, because we can't expect anyone from the outside to stand up for our subculture for us.
Well, that's why I joked about this on Twitter. I should not only redo it on Twitter, I should expand on it to include stuff like not just the hyper violent OVAs like Violence Jack and Angel Cop and all that, but stuff like, because what I'm basically talking about is pleb filter anime. But stuff like Popotan, because that to me is a pleb filter anime, because it filters out.
Strike Witches is another one.
Yeah, Popotan, Strike Witches. Well, no, because Strike Witches has its fans here anyway, but it's these things that that generally by people who don't know any better get a sort of knee-jerk reaction, but those that kind of get in on it and understand the little nuances of what either makes these interesting, or there's either something more, or just sort of like doesn't care about the controversial aspects, or like just even laughs off the stuff that's like would be considered sexist or racist or whatnot, or insensitive. Just sort of like laugh it off. It's like, ah ha ha ha, last episode of Angel Cop.
Oh yeah, and you're getting getting back to the main point, is that okay? Anime is for everyone, quote unquote. Quite clearly, if you were to, there are people whom, if you were to show them Angel Cop, or Violence Jack, or Genocyber, or Popotan, or Strike Witches, or Divergence Eve, or Eromanga Sensei, or Ori Imo, they would be straight up repulsed by it. And some of them would want it destroyed. But there are people who, if you did show them Popotan, or Strike Witches, or Emo, Eromanga Sensei, Violence Jack, Genocyber, Angel Cop, who would be intrigued by it and want to know more about it. Those are the people anime is for. Here's the thing. we don't need to suffer intolerant people in anime. And that goes for racists, sexists, homophobes, transphobes, all those people. That also goes for people who, some of whom are in high levels of anime fandom right now, who refuse to give cute girl anime a fair shake and are constantly shitting on its fans, who are out here ranting about the same anime for 6 months because they don't like it and don't think it should exist. It's these people who, again, don't have a live and let live bone in their body. And I'm saying, well, anime is for everyone. Anime isn't for those people. Not for those people. Because clearly they have a different utility with anime. Because it's easy. It's remarkably easy to just not watch some shit that you don't want to see. It's so easy in anime. It's so easy. VZ, when's the last time you watched an anime you hate?
I don't know. I mean, I'm getting mad at old maidens, but you know.
Here's the thing: if that show makes you mad enough, you can just stop watching it, and it'll actually be easier to not watch it. Like, you have to put effort into watching anime. Like, that's what gets me about it, is you need to, like, if I just sit here, the Aku no Hana anime isn't gonna just start playing if I don't stop it. Like, anime I don't like isn't just gonna start flashing before my eyes involuntarily if I do nothing. You have to do something to watch an anime you hate. And that's the problem. This isn't that, I put out a series of tweets. This was months ago, probably close to a year ago, or more so than a year ago. I don't know. I put out a series of tweets, and this actually became yet another article I posted on the Ashike back in August. You have to put effort into seeing some shit you hate. And the problem is,
I mean, yeah, but I guess
people act like they just see anime they hate all the time. People act like Shield Hero is like forcing their way into their window and forcing them to watch Shield Hero.
Yeah. Okay, I'll give you an anime that I hate. At least, again, Gundam Wing. There you go. There's Gun. Despite me liking the design work and all that, but the actual show is just something I cannot get into, because when it's not boring, I find the characters infuriating. I should try watching a little bit more.
Well, here's the thing: if you sat there and did nothing, is Gundam Wing just gonna start playing on your TV?
No.
Yeah, exactly. You have to do something in order to see Gundam Wing. So, my point was, are you in the anime subculture to enjoy anime, or are you in the anime subculture to complain? And what people might say is, well, I'm in it to enjoy it, but I keep seeing all this stuff that makes me mad. And the answer to that is, it's not that you keep seeing it, it's that you keep exposing yourself to it. And you might not be doing that deliberately, but you are creating a scenario and an environment where that stuff can very easily present itself to you, and there's nothing you can do about it except go and rearrange your environment so you're not seeing shit that makes you mad all the time. And
here's another fact. I'm sorry, but I wanted to say, here's another factor that I think goes into that, that you probably do realize is that a lot of these people are, they have the mentality of I have to keep up with everything new and current, which is fine. I love watching new and current stuff, but nobody's forcing you to watch new and current stuff. And why? Why? Because Shield Hero was the big thing when it was out. Because Goblin Slayer was the big thing and it's like, okay, listen, I have no interest in Fate. Fate does not do. I'm not gonna go shit on the people that really love Fate.
Well, I mean, here's the thing with that. When I'm talking about creating an environment where this stuff can present itself to you and piss you off, obsessing over seasonal anime is part of that environment. If these people's and it's a combination of their social media and their peers and the people they associate with. It's a combination of all those things, and if that's creating if that combined with obsessing over seasonal anime is creating an environment where they're seeing stuff that pisses them off all the time, then that's still their fault because they created that environment, because they decided that them being happy and enjoying themselves in this subculture is less important to them than watching whatever the new shit is out each season, which fundamentally does a lot of damage to how they're able to talk about anime going forward. But that's another article that I'm still writing for Yashike. But where I'm going with this is human beings are notoriously terrible at multitasking. Everyone knows this, but everyone still tries to multitask. And where this happens with anime is people try to do both at the same time, enjoy the anime they like, and also obsessively pay attention to the anime they hate. And the new paradigm I'm on now with that is you are fundamentally disrespecting, being ungrateful to the shit you like by paying attention to the shit you hate all the time. You're fundamentally disrespecting all the shit out here trying to make you happy. You are being disgustingly ungrateful to by paying attention to the shit you like.
Well, again, it all comes down to that whole they have that mentality of this existing, it's hurting actual people mentality. Like the whole thing in Shield, in Goblin Slayer and Shield Hero, they're being about rape, and it's like, just because they brought up the topic in the show doesn't mean it's condoning said but I guess
that's why these people fucking lose all the time. Because
but then why do they have the top positions in social media?
Because that's none of that is predicated on levels of respect in the subculture. Because understand, we didn't build those positions. Like the otaku at the ground level, the rank and file, we didn't build those positions. We didn't build ANN. We didn't build Crunchyroll and Anifem. Those were built by people to install themselves at the top level. And I say ANN, I don't know that that's the case, so maybe I shouldn't say ANN, but at this point that's basically how they exist. But certainly Anifem, and certainly on some level Crunchyroll, at least as far as the social aspect and the community aspect goes, these were built by people to be able to install themselves at the top level. And make no mistake, to a certain extent, I'm doing the same thing with the Yashike. What I hope people understand, however, is that there's a difference between what I'm doing with the Yashike and what people are doing with Anifem, and what people are doing with ANN. There's a fundamental difference, and here's one distinction that's important. There's a fundamental difference between what I was doing with Task Force MOE, for example, and what I'm doing with the Ashike. It's like Task Force MOE, that was the destructive phase. That was where I'm breaking down all the bullshit coming from these people on high who are lying to people about aspects of this medium and aspects of this subculture. And now Iyashike is telling people the truth. And again, to a certain extent, part of the establishment of Iyashike is so I have a piece of this infrastructure, a piece of this subculture infrastructure.
See, I think that's
where I'm at the top and where I can not so much dictate but influence parts of the culture surrounding Iyashike, and from there that ripples out into the greater subculture. But what I hope people understand is I'm trying to do something positive. I have no interest in denigrating other parts of the subculture unless they are being actively destructive. And quite frankly, a lot of the anti-fem people, a lot of the ANN people probably think they're doing the same thing. But where we differ is that I have no interest in what cartoons people like, insofar as whether or not they're doing damage to the subculture.
Well, yeah, that's another factor. But I think what I was saying earlier about I think using Pobotan, I think because I don't think you saw that, right?
No, I haven't finished Pobotan yet.
Okay, that's something that would be an excellent thing for you to watch down the line and then writing about, because that would be a great sort of you people were completely missing on something.
Oh yeah, and that's the entire reason.
So,
I've seen a few episodes, but I haven't seen the whole thing. But I know, when you talk about the deeper aspects of Popotan, I know exactly what you're talking about, and that's why I bought it on disc.
Because it's such a good show in that aspect, and I love the fan service. I love the character, but guess what? There's other things that are actually even more so, because I've brought up the term. We all know it was good despite fan service, right. But I've also invented the term it was bad despite the fan service, which I used for that show, Fight Ipatsu Jude-chan.
Right.
From the same creator as Kiss Says. Which is great on all accounts. But
well, here's another thing. And just make it a point off of that, talking about the people in high levels who tend to be fundamentally intolerant when it comes to certain aspects of certain 100% legitimate aspects of the anime subculture. Can anyone name me an anime critic at one of these high levels who can actually speak on fan service without denigrating it?
None. The closest few that I could ever amount to that I could come up with, there's few. Peter Payne of J-List.
Peter Payne, who owns an online store that sells Onaholes, which isn't not to shit on Peter Payne. I love the fact that he owns an online store that sells Onaholes, but he's not an anime critic.
No, but he does talk about like if there's a show of the season, and he'll do on the blog.
Well, yeah, he talks about the stuff because that's a marketing thing. That's driving traffic to his website because he's talking about stuff that's relevant to the subculture.
The other one I would say is John of Anime Nation.
John of Anime Nation, who have either of us heard from him in years? I know he put out his light novel.
He has a YouTube, and he did put out a video last month or something of stuff he got, but yeah, he doesn't really write stuff.
He's not much of a critic either, is he? He does Ask John, which is informative, but
What
I
about
don't really see him do reviews or criticism.
what about I would say Chris Beveridge, but only the cases he doesn't shit on a show for having fan service.
Yeah, and what I'm talking about is someone who can actually speak on fan service on a level where these other critics can speak on other things.
But yeah, I there really isn't one.
Yeah, the number is 0. Because there's a culture on these higher levels of the anime fandom where fan service is something to just not talk about. And so and that's a result of the fact that a lot of fundamentally intolerant people have made it to these levels. And so when we go back to is anime for everyone, the problem is that when you get this inclusivity edict, you allow people who have no love, have no respect, have no interest in the subculture as it exists to come in and start molding the subculture to what they want it to be. And here's the thing, and we haven't mentioned this yet, which I think is hilarious. It is not lost on me that the company that has a vested interest in anime being as popular as it possibly can be in the West is out here on the inclusivity edict saying everything is for anime is for everyone.
Oh, no,
they have a direct profit motive in promoting that inclusivity aspect. Direct profit motive. They're going if they can convince people who have no interest in anime to get into anime and subscribe to Crunchyroll, then they make more money. And that's a hustle that I can't disrespect because sure, that's marketing and whatnot, but what are you doing to the subculture when you do that? What are you doing to what are you doing to anime on a whole when you do that? Because you're bound to attract a lot of people that are culturally incompatible with the culture that's come up around anime. Just straight up culturally incompatible. They don't understand. They have no interest in understanding. They have no desire to understand. They have no respect for this.
Well, it's only going to get
this stuff.
It's only going to become bigger in that aspect because in an effort to do this inclusivity thing, the Western comic book market has more or less imploded, and more people are going to manga.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's weird, but it's so like, and again, these aren't people who are like I'm interested in Japanese, culture or anything. Especially when you look at the stuff that what comics they're looking at, because it's stuff like My Hero Academia and Attack on Titan and One Punch Man, very like superhero-ish stuff.
Sure, but here's the thing: well, just on that, everyone starts somewhere. And the people who come in from comics are going to start with what's familiar to them. But there's definitely a chance that they're going to discover something that's a little bit more offbeat than your Attack on Titan or your My Hero Academia. And they're going to get deeper into the medium off of that. And what's concerning to me is whether or not they're going to have proper guidance for when they do that dive. Because if we continue on the inclusivity edict, what we're going to end up with is a a lot of a a fundamental lack of people who are not only knowledgeable enough, but fully willing to engage with newer fans and kind of teach them the ropes. Say, okay, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what you should watch next. Here's, based on what you came in here off of, here's some stuff you might like. Hey, here's some older stuff. I can put this into context for you. That's important.
You should see Cowboy Bebop and Redline.
Well, hey, so maybe they should see Cowboy Bebop and Redline. But what's important is when they see it. Because so not the first anime, but if they got 3-5 anime under their belt, say, hey, okay, this is a show called Cowboy Bebop. It's really good. A lot of people really like it. You should check that out. It's a little bit older, so it's a different art style. It's more realistic and whatnot, etc. But give it a shot. See how you like it. And what's important is that we have people to be able to put that into context for people. But,
and especially when Hollywood decides to mine this stuff.
Well, I don't think Hollywood is a threat at all, quite frankly.
Well, given that comic books are like, you know.
Well, yeah.
You're gonna have to like.
Well, none of those movies are going to be good, is the issue. So, sure, they can try, but it's going to be a loss for them, because they're not going to be able to make good content out of that. But here's the idea. What's important is that barriers to entry are enforced. And, again, they can be low barriers to entry. The barrier to entry to the anime subculture. Respect the medium, respect the subculture, respect the people within it. Start out on those 3. Hey, if you're in here and you don't respect the medium enough to know what you're talking about, but you're trying to make sweeping criticisms about stuff you don't like to see in anime and whatnot, you deserve a little bit of scrutiny, because because it's apparent by your actions, and maybe this isn't the case, but it's apparent by your actions that you don't have enough respect for the subculture to learn about it enough so you can know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like me when I get on to people about, you know, if you want to know the history of robot anime, one of the more important aspects, you know, and why, you know, in context, one you kind of have to know the history of robot toys, because the two are so interlinked. But yet there's some people who only know one aspect but not the other, or.
Well, it's like, because this is a problem I've had for quite a while, and I believe this is something we've also talked about several episodes ago on the podcast, is like, you have a lot of people who are entirely willing to talk about the artistic aspects of anime. They're comfortable talking about that. They like talking about that. But as soon as you introduce any business aspect, they act like the fucking aliens just landed.
But that's capitalism. It's bad.
Well, it's like nobody wants to talk about sales numbers. And I'm like, I understand that you don't think sales numbers equate to quality. The number of people saying that they do is 0. There's still some valuable information that we can get if we start talking about stuff like marketing, stuff like sales, all that. But that's all predicated on whether people are ready to have that discussion. And for some reason, people seem to be remarkably hostile to that line of discussion, and I don't understand why. Because if we're gonna accept a world in which artistic properties are bought and sold, then it stands to reason if we're going to talk about those properties in a real world context that we need to also factor in stuff going on in the business aspects of this buying and selling of artistic properties.
Yeah, especially in something so ingrained with
Yeah,
marketing, and it's like, how do you talk about Mazinger and not talk about like, like, well, the word Shigokin, came from the show Mazinger, so it's like you can't you can't separate it. You can't separate the marketing aspect and the the business aspect with. I mean, because even today, it's like you see like how these things are sort of predicated on people getting really into the characters, and that's how the most successful. Most of the successful stuff is people getting really into the characters, and the companies know that and release figures of said characters, and everyone's fine with that.
Yeah, exactly. When you don't want to add in the business aspects, you're having half a conversation. Because on some level, you can get to a pretty ground level just talking about art, but if we're doing the real world thing, we're talking about artistic properties bought and sold in the real world. At some level, you have to go down below that into business paradigms, and people don't want to do that. So as a result, they can get to a certain point, but they stop at that point, and they can't get any further with the conversation because they're not willing to talk about why something might have been a good marketing decision, and that's why they went with that artistically. They're not willing to talk about, okay, what do say the top 10 anime on some anything have in common that we can measure that. They don't want to talk about that. But that's somewhat getting beside the point. The main idea of this anime is or isn't for any one thing is anime isn't for everyone, but anime can be for anyone provided they respect the subculture, they respect the medium, they respect the people in the subculture. Because if you don't respect any of those three things, then the only reason for you being in anime subculture is you have some kind of ulterior motive. And whether that's you're trying to socially profit, you're trying to politically profit, you're trying to financially profit, or just trying to bully people. Or getting into the seedier elements, you're trying to get ill-gotten panty shots of cosplayers, or you're trying to sexually assault people at conventions. That if you have no respect for any of those three aspects, then chances are you pose some sort of danger to the subculture. Chances are you're willing to do damage to the subculture, you're willing to do harm to the people within it, if your end game is sufficiently satisfied by that. And that's not what I'm willing to let happen by not speaking out against this anime is for everyone bullcrap that Crunchyroll wants to put out.
No.
That's superficial. That's surface level. That's oh, okay, we're gonna say this positive thing. Yay, anime is for everyone. Yeah, we get it. Anime is for black people, for Hispanic people, for white people, Asian people, all Native Americans, everyone in between. Anime is for men, anime is for women, anime is for non-binary people, anime is for trans people, anime is for lesbians, gays, bisexuals, asexuals, pansexuals, people who are questioning their sexuality, animes for all of those people. Everyone's welcome in the anime subculture, provided you have a respect for the subculture. You have a respect for the people in the subculture. That's important, and that's something that nobody talks about. Is can we have a level of respect for other anime fans, if only because they're just other human beings inhabiting the subculture with you. You have respect for the subculture, you have respect for the people in the subculture, and you have a respect for the medium. So yeah, if you're trans and you're into anime, cool in the gang. If you respect the subculture, if you're gay and you're into anime, cool in the gang. If you respect the subculture, if you're white and you're into anime, cool in the gang. If you respect the subculture, anyone who respects the subculture, respects the people within it, respects the medium, is welcome. But they have to meet that barrier of entry, and that's what's important. And that's what anime is for everyone fundamentally misses, and that's why it's dangerous.
I think that's the show.
No, I don't think that's the show, because we got a third segment. I told you about this. Because you think I'm mad about this anime is for everyone thing. I'm upset about this thing coming up in the third segment that we're rolling into right now. Keep it right here on NTR Radio. Welcome back to NTR Radio. So, the Geeky Panda has joined us for this third segment.
Yes, I am here. I've been listening, and I'm like, listen, you're going to need some panda opinions up in here, so I'm glad that I'm stopping by here.
So, did mention ANN a lot on the previous segment, and that's Anime News Network, and they actually put out something quite interesting recently.
Really?
So this is going out in the IRC right now. Justin Savakis, who is the original founder of Anime News Network and has served as their answer man, answering various questions about the anime industry and the anime subculture throughout for the past couple years, is stepping down as the answer man.
Yeah. To be fair, he does work in the industry, so...
He has interesting industry knowledge. That said, VZ, you and I went off about him lying a couple years ago. So there are things he can be trusted talking about, and there are things he can't be trusted talking about. But that's neither here nor there regarding this particular article. Now, this isn't terribly long, but it's important that we go through this article because quite frankly, it illustrates some of the things we were talking about in the last segment. So the question goes as follows: where do we go from here? This year has absolutely sucked, both outside the world of anime, but plenty inside of it too. With so much rocking the foundation of the industry, between bigger companies coming in, the scandals, the attacks, what's the work that needs to be done from here? In Justin Savakis' response, saying this year has sucked is the understatement of the century. It's been a traumatizing, fractious, mournful year. Some of us are just fine. Others are quietly wondering to themselves if they still want to be here, particularly after seeing the behavior of some other fans in the face of all that's happened. And as with most things, the more online you are, the worse you probably feel. I settled on that question and started writing a few times before the enormity of what was being asked really hit me. Where do we go from here? Do we try to rebuild our community as we remember it back when reality wasn't constantly crashing our world, crashing into our world of escapism? How do you even do that? And while it's totally valid to take a step back after being frustrated by people in internet drama, surely I can't advocate walking away from something you love, even if you're one of the people that got abused, attacked, or doxxed. But then I thought about the summer I just had. I was having those thoughts too. I was thinking, do I really want to spend more of my finite life dealing with an increasingly abusive and toxic fandom? I remembered how it used to be, how exciting it was to hang out with the cool, nice nerds, and how it was fun, and how much fun it was to actually be able to bond with each other. Similarly, with other similarly obsessed people over a shared love of something. Yeah, that was pretty great. I hadn't gone to a con for fun in literally years. In fact, I'd spent the last few years spending as little time at Anime Expo as possible. X is just too crowded to be comfortable to me anymore. But this year I spent a little longer there, hanging out with some friends and working the discotheque booth for a few hours, and I felt a little better. So I thought, to hell with it. I shelled out some bucks and made a last-minute trip to Otakon, which seems to have more of my particular tribe, the old-timers, than most of the other big shows. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones. I got to see how great fans actually can be. It was an important reminder of why I'm here and why I worked so damn hard. I'd already booked my trip when I heard the awful news about Kyoto Animation, and the big sweaty nerd group hug felt more than comforting. It was downright necessary. There's a certain spirit to the cool fans. There's an engaged helpfulness and a gratitude for the stuff they like that doesn't come across on social media as often as it should. But it's this attitude that built fandom into what it is today. Despite being far smaller than mainstream comic or video game culture, the anime community is far more organized and structured. We've built journalism outlets and databases and volumes of writing on places like Wikipedia and elsewhere. We've cross-referenced credit to our favorite creators across two very different languages on opposing continents. We have a more robust and developed convention circuit than nearly any other fandom. We even have important preservation work being done, maybe kind of sort of illegally, on media that would otherwise be lost. We did that. That spirit is still there. Trust me, it is. It might be hard to find, so you have to look for it. It's buried deep in online forums and Facebook groups and in subcultures, like the ones dedicated to developing some esoteric piece of software to catalog old laserdiscs, or sharing fan art of one specific series. When you narrow your focus that much, you get to see and meet the individuals, and you end up finding some pretty good ones without too much effort. Drama flares up everywhere from time to time, of course. I can't tell you why you should continue being an anime fan, going to cons, reading ANN, watching new shows. Everyone's reason is going to be different. Maybe some people would be better served by walking away or maintaining a healthy distance, but I can tell you why I'm sticking around. I'm sticking around because the people that are dedicated and decent and interesting are just too damn dedicated and decent and interesting to ever walk away from. There's always some amount of kvetching and jerky cynicism, but and sometimes it really grates. But to me, they're worth putting up with for the good stuff. Being a nerd is who I am, and I suspect it's what you are too. Being around nerds and engaging in the community has enriched my life in ways I can't describe. More than that, it has defined me. I had my moments of wishing I wasn't one, and I've tried to reinvent myself a few times, but like a young Amish adult on the Rumspringa, I always end up coming back. But it's essential that we become the right kind of a nerd. There are the ones looking for a fight who take out their self-loathing on other people. There are the ones that help, that share the resources they have and build new ones. The anime scene may be very different today than it was 20 years ago, but socially, there are a lot of aspects that haven't changed at all. It's just gotten a lot more crowded in here. There are certain battles to be fought, certain things that need fixing. That much is obvious. But the most important thing to be done is to not freak out too much. The world has a way of making everything go awry at some point. People are going to suck sometimes. Things are going to suck sometimes, whatever we do. But what we do have some control over is the company we keep, over ourselves, and what we pay attention to. More importantly, we control what we bring to the table and what we contribute. It has been my privilege. Now here's the thing. I could have written that. All these paradigms, this is all shit I've been talking about for years. This thing about seeking out the subcultures and the more esoteric, the online forums and the Facebook groups and all that. That was another Yashike article. I think it was Dig Deep and Specialize is the title of that article. All this talk about connecting with the fans and not being as online as much. That's some shit I've been talking about for quite a while. And quite frankly, if this isn't in the context it was in, I would have no problem with this. The issue is that this is an article posted on Anime News Network. Now the problem with it being posted on Anime News Network is that Anime News Network are the instigators of a lot of the same shit that Justin is complaining about with regard to all this controversy and drama in the anime fandom. They're the instigators of that. So can you two forgive me for being a little bit skeptical as to the genuineness of these sentiments when this is posted on the same website whose executive editor decided to basically decided to use the preview for C3 Boo just as a way to argue about gun control, which hey, we're talking when reality wasn't constantly crashing into a world of escapism, then ANN editors are, and that's not the first or last time they did that. They're constantly bringing real world bullshit into cartoons where it doesn't belong, where it's not necessary, where it doesn't need to be. We're talking about this going on the same publication that fresh off the heels of them having to disavow 100% Hazakari because he turned out to be a remarkably unsavory person out here basically sexually assaulting people at conventions, and that was a person that wrote articles for them. Yeah, fresh off the heels for that, they decided to throw Vic Mignogna under the bus, which whether or not he did what they accused him of doing, the reason they decided to do that article when they did that article is not noble. They're not trying to be heroes. So can you two forgive me for being a little bit skeptical as to how genuine these sentiments are when it's also posted on this particular website? Because this is all shit I'm 100% on board with, and I understand the feeling of seeing all the bullshit that goes on in the subculture, and saying, well, what the fuck? Where do we go from here? How do we fix this? How do we get back to a point where we're enjoying what we're doing again? I fully understand being at that mentality, but what I recognize is that this is the publication that is the cause for a lot of that. This is a publication whose people constantly drag real world bullshit into the anime subculture, who constantly are actively shitting on fans of cartoons for being fans of the wrong cartoons. So I'm on board with the idea of finding the good fans, going deep into these specialized communities, and finding the people you really click with and who you really enjoy spending time with. But can we please acknowledge the damage ANN has done?
Anubis, do you have like a playbook that's being left out for someone else to read here at this point? Because I swear to God.
Oh yeah, I do. It's called she'slostcontrol.net, and you go to the blog, and you go to the last page of the blog, and you start reading from there to the present. And then from there, what you do is you go to yashike.moe, and then you go to the last page of that and read from there to the present. I've had a playbook since 2011. Here's the curse of being me. I'm right all the time, but everyone realizes it 5 years too late. All of this shit that Justin's talking about, and again, he's talking legitimate things to complain about in the subculture. This isn't a joke. 2019 has been a remarkably shitty year for anime fandom. From the KyoAni fire to the whole ongoing thing with Vic and other voice actors. It's just been a garbage fire from January till now. My thing is, Anime News Network has a role to play in that. They had a role to play in that. They instigated part of this. Even looking at the KyoAni fire, people were shitting on them for publishing the names when the families of the people who perished in the KyoAni fire didn't want their names published until after funerals had been held. Oh, but ANN's gonna... Oh, ANN they're gonna publish the names. Good journalism costs money, people. It's frustrating to me when people are making highly legitimate grievances about the state of the anime subculture, but for some reason they don't want to be upfront about who's responsible for making these conditions the way they are. I've had an ongoing problem with people from this crowd since 2011, 2012, since before we started this podcast. And nobody wants to acknowledge that that damaging paradigms are coming out of the mouths of the people at these high levels. And if we're going to talk about, and if we're going to be genuine about, okay, where do we go from here? how do we fix this? How do we come back to where we can enjoy ourselves again? If we're going to talk about that, then we need to be upfront about who's responsible for the state of things as they are now. And we're not doing that. We're not doing that. And maybe it's because Justin Savakis doesn't want to throw the organization he started under the bus. Maybe that's the reason. Maybe he's got contractual obligations. I don't know. Maybe that's the reason. But we're not being upfront about who's causing problems. And to be 100% fair, it's not just ANN. It's certainly not just ANN, but the reason this is a particular pet peeve for me is because this is on ANN that we're posting this article, and we can't even talk about the role they played in making things the way they are now. Because we're gonna talk about, okay, we're gonna basically subtly allude to the Vic Mignogna thing, but we can't. Number one is we can't be specific about it because I guess that'll bring down the wrath of the I Stand With Vic people, and I guess we can't talk about the fact that ANN was the instigator for that, because that would maybe make ANN guilty of something. That would call into question whether it was a good idea to do that or not. Looking in hindsight at the damage that controversy has done, at the rift that controversy has caused in the subculture. And again, regardless of whether the accusations are true or not, what is true is that this thing caused massive damage to the subculture. Irreparable is in the air, but listen, we've got voice actors out here saying heinous things to rank and file anime fans on social media. And social media is another problem, by the way. And that's another thing we talked about on a previous podcast that for some reason people decided to battle me on, but social media is another problem. But the issue and the reason I'm upset about this whole thing is that for some reason we don't want to acknowledge that that maybe the people in these positions, the people who are in positions adjacent to Justin and other people, have a role to play in this. That maybe, maybe it wasn't an idea. Maybe it wasn't a good idea to let writers at ANN run buck wild and do things that just outright insult fans. Maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe it would have been a better idea to rein people in order to not cause things to get to the level they're at now. Because if back in 2013 someone had like tapped some shoulders and said, "Hey, do you think it's a good idea to shit on these people just because they like cute girl anime?" You don't think that can have some extremely negative consequences if repeated? You don't think that might be a remarkably terrible thing to continue doing habitually and not stop when called out? You don't think that's a bad call? nobody tapped anyone on the shoulder for that. And anytime someone like me clapped back and said, "Hey, I'm one of these people you're insulting habitually, and I don't appreciate it, and here's why I think you're off base," they wanted to battle me on that because they want to fight for their right to call Moe fans pedophiles. So there's certainly a part of me, and really no, it's not really a part of me. I for the most part believe the sentiments here are sincere. What I don't think is sincere is the fact that we're not calling out how this really came to be. And I'm not even talking about this year. I'm talking about what happened 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago that contributed to the state of things right now. Because apart from the Kiowani fire, which is just a random tragedy, all the fandom drama bullshit going on right now, the fucking Shield Hero thing, the Vic thing, all these divisions.
The Kiowani thing is a tragic but separate issue.
Yeah, it's a completely
all the
separate
other stuff
issue.
is connected.
All the other stuff, you can directly trace the paradigms behind those back again 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Directly trace the paradigms. And a lot of those paradigms can be traced back to people who wrote at ANN, who used their platform to talk down at people who like certain types of anime, particularly cute girl anime. And who knows why? I have my own hypotheses as to why. It doesn't really matter. What matters is nobody's drawing that line all the way back. Because if we were to draw that line all the way back, it suddenly, number one, you suddenly run up against a lot of the big names in this fandom who've condoned this behavior for a decade plus, and number two, you start having to admit that some people were wrong to do what they did, to say what they said. You start having to admit that maybe allowing this to happen, maybe standing by while all this was happening in the subculture that you're now talking about being fucked up right now, maybe allowing all that to happen back in the day wasn't a good idea. You ready for me to get self-aggrandizing? You start to realize maybe that crazy Task Force Moe guy was right. Maybe he was right that the constant denigration, the constant unmitigated hostility toward people who like certain anime from people in Tastemaker.
I was dealing with this. I was dealing with this even before, like 6-7 years ago, like you were saying.
Well, here's the thing. Even the people, perhaps the unmitigated hostility toward people who like certain kinds of anime was a bad thing, and we shouldn't have been complicit in it. We shouldn't have condoned it coming from our own people. We shouldn't have allowed this level of disrespect to be inflicted upon people for difference in preference over cartoons. Maybe it was a bad call to enshrine certain cartoon preferences as good and condemn other cartoon preferences as bad. Perhaps if we didn't enshrine that perspective, we might end up with a more respectful subculture overall, and perhaps if we had a more respectful subculture overall, none of this shit would have happened. We wouldn't have and here's to get even deeper on it. We wouldn't have a highly dedicated, passionate group of people who are all onto ANN's bullshit and aren't going and put ANN under intense scrutiny all the time and aren't going to buy when ANN, following the Hazukari thing, puts out an article on Vic Mignogna. Maybe if ANN hadn't cultivated a reputation for being against certain kinds of cartoons in particular, they would have a stronger reader base. Maybe they wouldn't be on the financial ropes as they have been. Maybe they would be a more respected journalistic outlet within the anime space. Maybe it was a bad idea to let their executive editor and his cohort consistently shit on people over their preferences in cartoons. Again, maybe that crazy Task Force Moe guy was right. We only realized that 8 years too late. And by which point I have no sympathy. If you're part of if you're part of this organization that decided it was going to be a good call to do all this bullshit years ago, and now you're complaining about how hostile the anime community is, I have no sympathy for you. You know what you did. Why'd you do it?
Because I was dealing with it.
There's no scenario in which you could have foreseen that having a bad outcome if repeated years down the line. Stupid or liar. Either you're dumb and either you're just dumb and can't think 5 minutes into the future, or you just wanted to do what you did in the moment because it made you feel good about yourself. Didn't care about you didn't care about what would happen to the fandom at large until it started to come and bite you in the ass. Until it started to become less fun for you personally, because it's the chickens come home to roost. So
but I was dead.
I don't have sympathy for people who helped instigate this stuff. And quite frankly, I'm not even saying Justin Savakis helped instigate this stuff. Apart from him occasionally publishing Answer Man articles that lack in accurate knowledge, I actually really have no problem with Justin Savakis. The problem is the organization that he founded and that has run amok over the course of the years. The problem is that his associates are the people who are going buck wild, shitting all over fans for what amounts to preferences in cartoons. Again, as I mentioned in the last segment, just as superficial as race or gender or sexual orientation. Just as superficial. But the problem is that we enshrined being able to shit on certain people over certain cartoons. And this is one of a few organizations that helped enshrine that paradigm. It's a harmful paradigm. It should never have been allowed to reach the level it's reached, and it's a big part of why shit is so bad right now, but Justin doesn't want to acknowledge that. And I don't know why.
I wanted to say, because I agree with everything that you said there. But I wanted to just add that I was kind of the canary in the coal mine to a lot of this stuff. in a way, because I was getting the shit, a decade ago on places, on a certain toy farm that doesn't have a farm anymore.
Oh, funny that. So yeah, what it comes down to is I agree with everything Justin is saying. What I don't agree is where he's coming from. What I don't agree is that he doesn't seem to want to acknowledge his organization's role in why things are so bad, and his organization's role in everything, barring the Kiwani fire, because we know that's just a tragedy, and everything he's complaining about. Panda, your thoughts?
I do agree that this has been just kind of like a shit show here.
It's been
and the article's like, okay, but when it's from them, it's like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's been a fucked up year for anime.
Like,
and that's 100%. And what Justin is saying is 100%, but not when it's on Anime News Network.
Yeah.
Because they instigated a lot of this shit. And not just this year, but years back. They've been doing it for years.
It's like there's this saying, I forgot how it goes, but like if you want to look for a monster, all you got to do is just look in a mirror.
Look in the mirror. If you want to know why all this shit is the way it is, look in the mirror. Look at the organization. Look at the website you're writing on.
Like, I used to be an editor-in-chief for websites, and if I was at A&N and they're like, oh, let's post the names of the people who sadly perished in the fire before the families, they said, like, wait till after the funeral, like, I'll be like, no, we don't do that. Like, just stop here, like, the editor-in-chief is like the last line of defense to prevent bullshit from happening.
That's basic. And that's such a callous thing for them to do, is to ignore these families' requests.
Like, the editor-in-chief, like, you got to stand on the moral ground too. Like, you just.
But we're the moral people, because we're socially righteous, and
that's what it comes down to, is not just now, but through it. Well, especially now, coming off of the Vic thing, but not just now, but for years past. A lot of these A&N people have had an air of superiority to what they do, and again, they didn't realize or didn't care that repeating this paradigm of trying to enforce acceptable anime to talk about would be something that could be a very bad thing if repeated down the line. You'll
just divide the community even more. Like, community is supposed to be together, but you're just gonna now set up divisions. Be like, oh, you like that? You go over there with all the other people. I'm like, the fuck?
Yeah, you divide the fucking community for no reason.
It defies criticism.
Like, it's like we all boast about like, oh, we're a community, we're all together, but doing certain things like this, all you're just really doing is dividing the community even more, becoming more resentful to each other, just starting a fire when a fire doesn't need to be started. Like, don't go specifically hunting for the bullshit, just like, the problem is they're a big platform. And the people who like us are like, hey, okay, we'll respect this. Let's promote this because this is actually something a breath of fresh air. But, our platforms are smaller. Obviously, they're going to have more exposure. And then it's like hands tied. Like, they can post whatever they want and more people will look at it. And it's like, okay, can you kind of limit the message you're trying to speak here? Because a lot of this stuff is kind of bullshit right now.
Well, I mean, A&N's big downfall, and well, I say A&N, but this is particularly a failing of their executive editor of their editorial department. A&N's big downfall is that A&N's big downfall is the mentality that allowed me to forum troll my way onto their podcast. Because hey, I'm coming in. I'm crazy Task Force MOE guy, constantly arguing with their executive editor about cute girl anime, and eventually make my way onto their not just make my way, eventually get invited onto their podcast, have that discussion, and now I know several people who are on our side now because of the points I made on that episode of the ANN cast. And so, congratulations, dude. You just united a whole bunch of people against you by feeding the forum troll. And I say forum troll, I'm not just shitposting, I'm making legitimate points. But my point is, I was able to just directly stand up to their executive editor, say, "You're wrong. Here's why you're wrong." Habitually, and eventually they gave me a platform, which I then used to unite people against them. So there's the issue of them having a big platform, but at the same time, there is a passionate and growing contingent of people who see through their bullshit and they're not gonna just let them take them for a ride anymore. They see their leaning, they see how they're causing problems. They understand that there's some issues going on with ANN.
Yeah, it's like it's like you have to have standards. You gotta hold to them. You can't just lower it for like, I'm gonna make an article, but it's lowering our standards, but we're gonna get a lot of views. Let's do it. Like, no. Let's stick to our standards here, people.
Yeah, and that's what ANN did. That's what ANN did for a long time. That's what ANN still does. But people are seeing through it. And yeah. I am a tiny part of that, of people coming to realize that ANN ain't so hot.
And the thing is, it's like, there are other websites. There are other content creators who are passionate, who will call out the bullshit. And, they're either like web-based media, videos, podcasts, they're out there,
Oh yeah, and ANN's trying to stop them too.
Yeah.
I remember they had I think it was a copyright, either a copyright claim or a full-on copyright strike. I think it was a strike against a YouTuber who had put up a segment from their podcast. And this was concerning the Vic thing. This was earlier this year. And basically, if you follow the motives all the way back, you could say it was an attempt to get his information in order to intimidate him. But the YouTuber got a lawyer, fought back, and ANN rescinded the strike and ran off with the tail between their legs. They're not going to do that shit again.
Which also, the YouTube, a lot of companies are using that copyright system to their own advantages, which is really bullshit too.
And YouTube's starting to crack down on that, which is good.
Which thank Christ, because it's like I recently got a copyright strike on something not too long ago, and it was for a gameplay portion. It was basically a cutscene, and some weird social, social media company copyrighted. So I called them out on my Twitter, and listen, you copyrighted something that I recorded on the Xbox One that you said it was on the PC, but this is like a cutscene. You have to watch this. And after that, they rescinded. I'm like, okay, good, yes, please.
Oh yeah.
Go back, we have to, we need content creators that are not afraid to fight back if the copyright strike is in the wrong.
Exactly.
Because people are afraid of stuff like that because the copyright strikes, if you fight it, and then if there's a risk that everything will blow up in your face, it's 10 times worse. But at the same time, if you know that this copyright strike is wrong and there is a clear good chance that you can get this rescinded, do it. Honestly, do it. Because
it's illegal to send a DMCA takedown notice in bad faith. It's illegal.
That's what happening with the Borderlands guy with Borderlands 3.
Yep.
And it sucks. And it's like, again, we need more people calling out the bullshit. We need more people. There are other content creators out there you can go to, guys.
And people are starting. People are, as far as ANN goes, people have been calling out the bullshit for years at this point. And just my concern is, I want people to know, and I want people to acknowledge that maybe Justin Savakis could stand to do a little cleanup in his own backyard. Maybe his organization is part of the problem. And maybe if we'd realized that, well, I say we realized all this years back, but the royal we, as if Justin et al. Had realized that this could have been a problem, these paradigms could have been a problem years back when they had still been doing this shit. They realized that if repeated, this could do immense damage to the fandom, immense division to the fandom. If they'd realized that, maybe understand if they realized that, back then, none of this shit would be going on. Maybe realize that not condemning this stuff wherever it occurs was a mistake. Maybe Justin wouldn't have quite as much to complain about this year. But neither of those things happened. And as a result, Justin Savakis is posts this highly legitimate but still bleeding heart farewell on his answer man column.
Like, I will give him credit where credit is due. This article, like,
credit where credit is due. Yeah, he's talking about some real shit. And if someone asks me, hey man, stuff just got fucked this year, where do we go from here? You're gonna hear me say something very similar to Justin Savakis. The difference is gonna be that I know how this got the way it got, and I'm willing to acknowledge how this got the way it got. And I'm willing to own up to my role in how this got the way it got. But when it comes to ANN, when it comes to Justin Savakis and his organization that he started, Anime News Network, we need to acknowledge that they had a role to play in all of this. I wish Justin Savakis luck in his further endeavors.
Yikes! What was that?
Sorry about that. That was my alarm.
I wish Justin Savakis luck in his further endeavors, and I sincerely hope that things get better for him from a subculture perspective and a fandom perspective. Because, listen, I don't want anyone to have a bad time in this fandom. But what I want in tandem with that is I don't want anyone to make anyone have a bad time. And Anime News Network has been guilty of that for years.
Okay, I think we're done.
That's the show. That's definitely the show.
You.
The email address is ntrradio@gmail.com. The website is ntrradio.net. VZ stuff is at vzmk2moemekagatai.wordpress.com. He also has a book called The Big Book of Idols. It's an Idol Master art book. You can find that at thebigbookofIdols.com.
How's the physical?
That's coming along. I should have it.
All right.
I should have updates for you in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
VZ also does the designs for our shirts, which can be found at iyashike.moe/store. iyashike.moe being the publication on which I post various articles on otaku lifestyle, otaku subculture, and whatnot. Mentioned a lot on this particular episode of the podcast. You can find that at iyashike.moe. The Geeky Panda. His stuff is at thegeekypanda.net. You can also find some of his stuff at iyashike.moe. He's partnered with us and creates content for us on a regular basis. Listen to the Bakugaijin show and Otaku Midnight. Both of those shows are really good. I'm on Twitter at TEAnubis. VZ is on Twitter at VZMK2. KGods is not here, but he is on Twitter at immortal_KGods. Panda, what's your Twitter?
It's the_geeky_panda.
And the show is NTR at NTR Radio. I'm Tom Forster Nubis.
I'm VC Mark II.
And I'm the Geeky Panda.
And even though anime is for everyone every time we say it, this is NTR Radio.